Is up, fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with my fantabulistic co-host, Grant Hughes. We're going to get into some peace or panic as promised, but before we do, my usual reminder slash plea, continue subscribing to us wherever you consume us. If that's on YouTube, hit the sub button. If you're new here, hit the like button, comment to help the algorithm love us back. Also, download us and subscribe to us on your podcast player of choice, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Google. Cross sub on both YouTube and a podcast player. It helps us out a ton. If you've done both those things, consider helping us promote the podcast. Shout us out on Twitter, retweet our promos, word of mouth, tell friends, family members, frenemies, random acquaintances that you meet on the street or at the voting polls about us and how awesome this podcast is, or how not shitty, or if you really think it's shitty but you hate listen anyway, tell them that makes it a good listen as well. Follow us on all the socials, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. What else am I forgetting there? No, those three. Those handles are all in the podcast and YouTube description. And join our Discord where you will get, we've yet to do a Twitter mailbag. It's all been Discord stuff so far this year. So get priority to having your questions answered and join great discussions happening that Grant and I don't even weigh in on sometimes at this point. Grant definitely doesn't because he doesn't even know what Discord is, I don't think. But I don't even have to talk anymore because everyone there is so awesome. So join our Discord. The link is in the podcast and YouTube description. With all that out of the way, the question everyone is always dying to know the answer to. Grant, how the heck are you doing?
I feel like I never have a good answer for this. I wonder if that, I just don't want to reveal too much. Maybe that's it. I don't want to put myself out there. It's raining here in California, which is cool. That doesn't happen very much, so I'm excited about that. And I hope all the drips off of the drain pipe right outside my window are not too distracting for you or the listeners.
I don't hear even a little bit of it. So
forget I said that then. Everything's
Are you recovering from that 15-game slate on Monday night?
I mean, that was a lot, right? That was a lot of games. I watched because I needed to see a win. I watched Warriors Kings most closely, but I was jumping around. That's a lot of games.
So you almost didn't get to see a win is what you're saying.
I really did not think there was going to be a win right up until there was one. Yeah, the Warriors have some issues that we will discuss, I think, at some length. But yeah, what did you focus in on last night? Did you have a particular game you were watching?
Yeah, so I watched 2 games in full, and then I was bouncing around to like the final quarters or closing stretches or something. I saw the end of Warriors Kings. Someone actually, Greg, friend of the podcast, learned me on Twitter that the Kings were running out some funky ass lineup. So like, all right, I guess I switched to this one since I was sort of in between. But my main focus was Rockets Magic, which was
because you're a masochist.
Well, it was like frenetic as hell. I really enjoyed it. Jalen Green was like an incendiary device, but that was the game I focused on at the start. But I'm not sure whether I would want more nights like that. And I'm not sure if it's because we need to, like, if I was just watching it as a fan, and this isn't an insult to a fan, but where I need to like process and synthesize this information,
yeah,
I would probably enjoy it. But I would I get overwhelmed by having the 15 games. And if we go into this and they're like, well, these are the things that you might have to cover, and there's like 8 different items that you might need to react to. It's like, well, I can't watch 8 games at once.
Yes, you can. 8 screens.
The crunch time, like red zone-y type thing that they did I thought it was interesting. And if it was like one night a week or something, but it's just like, you can't run that consistently because then you're just going to have entire days where it is, I will say, as someone whose sleeping patterns suck, it is nice to have, we're recording this on a Tuesday. It's nice knowing there aren't games today, but like, I would rather have them spread out than like if there's 2 nights a week where there just aren't games so that we could have these 15 game slates.
Yeah, it was overwhelming. That's why, I couldn't watch more than like 5 or 10 minutes of any game other than the main one I was watching. But yeah, I'll do the same thing where I'll just go see like which game's close in the fourth, if time being an issue, so I can like have a take on whatever happened at the end of the Heat game or whatever, which is pretty exciting actually last night. So that worked out well.
Let's move into peace or panic. We got these from, we threw it out. We have some teams that we're going to talk about ourselves towards the end, but we threw this out, peace or panic, to our Discord members. Again, join the Discord house for that plug. And they gave us responses. So we'll rotate. And I'll begin. Grant, this comes from Cole. Peace or panic, Jalen Suggs.
I love the name as the first category. So this is I mean, my first answer was peace because who cares? It's Orlando. So this is my second shot at the Magic already in this podcast. Great for the first 5 minutes.
They're like the 2028 NBA champions already. I don't know what the Magic slander is emanating over there in California. This is
So,
just bitter because you want their bench, I feel like.
oh, well, yeah, as a Warriors fan, I mean, I can't say anything about the Magic. And so that actually is a great jumping off point because if you only saw Jalen Suggs play his most recent game against the Warriors, there would be total peace here because he played the game of his life. I think he had 26 and 9. Don't check me on those stats. He had several steals, like a couple of which came against Steph Curry in the late stages that more or less clinched the game. He hit a bunch of big shots. But ultimately, for me, it's a little more panic because he, has all defensive team potential. Like this is flashes of Chris Dunn type stuff, which is not a name you want to necessarily be compared to because Chris Dunn's not in the league. But the ball just doesn't go in enough, right? Even with, he's had a hot game or two, 42 point. This is going into last night's game, so these may have changed a little bit, but 42-6 from the field, 25-9 from three, and 63-2 from the foul line, which that's worse than last year. And just as a measure of like, is this guy a shooter? If you're not making free throws, it's really hard to project like meaningful improvement. And for Suggs to be,
he went 1 of 4 on free throws against the Rockets as someone who watched that game, by the way.
So he got worse. He went down. So it's just like, it's really difficult to envision a future in which Suggs is anything more than, a defensive specialist that, if he's hot, then great. He can help you on both ends. And he looks like a, low end starter or rotation guy. It's still early, obviously, but just the key measures of just, can he shoot? Like, can he put the ball in the basket enough to really matter? Not great. So panic if you think Suggs is important enough, which based on where he was drafted, like the Magic feel that way, to bust is a strong word because he has some NBA skills, but like that's something you might want to be thinking about already.
I am all the way peace here. And I don't know that the free throw shooting, sure. I just don't. Orlando doesn't have any other guards right now, capable guards that are healthy. And Jalen Suggs is still doing a lot of stuff that should be streamlined for him. The turnovers can remain an issue. He needs to get better with his timing on like lobs. And if he wants to throw the court, those cross court passes, he should be more sure that they're not going to go into the 8th row of the stands when he's tossing them. So like, I get that, but also like, this is still someone, he's only made 2 assisted field goals this season. And that's someone who I think like, yeah, if you're worried about the catch and shoot 3-point percentage right now, I get it. But I do think that he's not really necessarily in the role that he would be in long-term. He's shooting 61.8% on twos, 56.3% on drives, limited number there. So there is still just like a very useful NBA player. And he's also, by the way, he's 9 of 11 on pull-up jumpers this year. And so like, they're still not giving him the best space to operate within. And I don't know that changes when you're looking at their guards getting healthier because it's Cole Anthony and Markelle Fultz. But I think what you mentioned about the expectations is fair. Whereas if you're expecting him to be this all-NBA type player, is it maybe time to panic? Then sure. But in terms of like, if you thought he was just going to be a fringe star or an all-star, which is where I thought a lot of people sort of wound up, I'm still very much peace here. And like, there are new moving parts to the way Orlando's playing with the stuff they've run with Franz Wagner, who him and Jalen Suggs seem to have really nice chemistry as well. Paolo Banchero being integrated into the offense. Yes, like I said, Jalen Suggs is lucky that Wendell Carter Jr. and Bobo have such a long catch radius on his passes. Like, we're not even halfway into his second season, and right. I don't know if he is ever going to be, if you took him out of the role of, I don't want to say primary point guard, but like your 1B playmaker even, like maybe that's not him. And you know what? That's going to be okay. And so I am very much peace here. If you ask me right now, if I think he makes an all-star team for his career, like, yeah, that's when it gets easier to hedge. But I would still, if it was set at 0.5, I would just take the over anyway, because I'm that much of a believer in at least the flashes that he has shown.
I do think, I mean, there are things to, I was all negative, but like, he does play really hard. And I think that matters. And it seems like, there should be a way because like, this is a team built around Paolo Banchero. I think just that's already obvious.
It's
I think
built around Bol, but go ahead.
He's going to, Bol. He's going to be, we're going to have another Magic question. You just made me remember. But if that's so if Suggs is not going to be the primary ball handler, which I think some of his passing and decision making suggests he should not be, he's got to make shots because like that's just the role that he's going to be in. And I think Wagner too should be someone that has the ball and can initiate and drive and kick. And so if you gave me the all-star bet and it was 0.5, I'd go under. I just think it's really hard for me to think of someone who came into the league and shot this badly that ended up like correcting it to a level where he made sense as essentially like a catch and shoot guy that could be like a second side attacker. Again, but it's super early. Like this is age 21 season. He could get better. It's just based on kind of past precedent and just thinking about who he reminds me of. It's like Chris Dunn just keeps coming to mind, and that's not great.
And look, to your point, catch and shoot threes account for over 27% of his shots. He's hitting them at an 11.8% clip.
I mean, that's got to come up, obviously.
But like, a little low. I'm saying like that's fair to. I mean, but you're talking about his free throw shooting. He's in the 50s now after that performance against the Rockets. So it's definitely a concern. I'm not there yet on the panic front.
All right, I'll take this one. This is from Darkwing Duck. Great early to mid 90s show on Channel 44 where I lived. None of the Jazz own draft picks.
Incredible.
None of the Jazz own draft picks in 2023 will be lottery picks. Peace or panic?
I mean, they own a Minnesota pick, so they're fine. So I mean, look, the less favorable, I guess you're looking at their own, and then you have Minnesota's, and then the less favorable of Houston's, Brooklyn's, and Philly's they get, right?
And that won't be in the lottery, basically, no matter what, right? Like that's
because Philly will make the playoffs, and you're getting the least favorable of that. So even if the Nets and the Rockets are both, I'm going to say peace here. I'm still not convinced. I'm sold on the Jazz being good. Top in the West, I mean, let's chill. But they run some just awesome lineups and playing 5 out a ton, and they really just like, when you look on paper, and I know that some of the guards have always crashed the glass hard on Utah offensively, but like they're a top 5 offensive rebounding team right now. Would you look at this roster on paper and expect them to be that?
No, not
at
all.
I'm getting a lot of those just like feelings about this team where it's there. Yeah, they play hard. They're built randomly, of course, but with an assortment of talent that, is capable, but they're doing things that you just don't like. Jordan Clarkson leveling up his passing, not something that you would expect. Larry Markkinen doing all kinds of things off the dribble, like becoming even a smarter cutter at this point in his career. The chemistry that it seems like they have already when you're looking at Sexton and some of the decisions he's made to find his teammates after leaving his feet, they haven't even been together that long. Why is he making those decisions? Colin Sexton hitting pull-up jumpers all of a sudden. So there's just like, they are good as constructed. I'm just not convinced that Danny Ainge is going to let this stand. I mean, if you're at the top of the West 20 games into the season, I guess you're almost obligated to. I would say of the picks that they have, is theirs still the most likely to be in the lottery? And that is the answer that I don't have, because I'm so the vibes emanating out of Minnesota just don't feel fantastic at the moment. So I'm going to say peace, but I'm going to say this right now. We are about 1 to 2 weeks away from panicking if you want the Jazz to have a lottery pick this season.
Yeah, I'm going to panic now because I think there are some indicators that, it was John Hollinger, I think, that noted that Utah opponents are just missing free throws at ridiculous rates. Like that's going to normalize. Their opponent 3-point percentage, I think, is like the 7th lowest. So that may normalize based on their overall location of shots they're allowing. This is all from Cleaning the Glass. What should the allowed effective field goal percentage be? Like that's pretty much in line with what they're allowing. So like, even that, there's not a clear sign of, oh, the wheels are going to fall off this thing. It's been smoke and mirrors. I don't think that's the case at all. But like, so to me, you say, say 10, 20 more games go by and they're still first in the West. Like maybe no, I think all the moves that Utah made once Danny Ainge was in charge were just totally designed to maximize championship equity. It's like a Daryl Morey concept, right? Like how do we up our percentage chance of winning a title? And like the first step in that is let's get as many high lottery picks as possible. And this year is the one that you have to get this year, right? Because it's Wembanyama. You have to get this one. So I think, like you alluded to, the longer this goes on, like the more likely it is that we got to trade Mike Conley. We got to trade, everybody, but really Markkanen's going nowhere. And I guess probably because they signed Sexton in the sign and trade, he's probably not going anywhere. I don't know, like Walker Kessler, I guess probably is a keeper, but like everybody else is just going to get traded. They have to, because otherwise, like what's the upside of with this roster being the 5th or 6th seed or whatever it ends up being? Like, you get some reps for guys, but most of whom are not going to be part of your core when you really are serious and contending in a real way, ideally in like 2, 3, 4 years. Like this was such a big swing with such grand ideas and just such an obvious, we're trying to win a championship down the line by doing this. You can't throw that away because your team is surprisingly good and you might, win 45, 50 games. And then like, where are you? I am panicking because I don't think that Wolves pick will be in the lottery. And I don't think if they don't change something that their pick's going to be in the lottery, or at the very least, like not a high lottery pick where you're in the running for Scoot Henderson or Wembanyama.
First of all, you say they're going to win 45 or 46. They're on pace to win like 62. So why don't I think I just don't. I'm at the point where it's like, if you're this good, do you sort of lean into it? And if you don't want to do that, then the decision needs to be made yesterday. Like you're not doing yourselves any. If that's what you actually wanted to do, and I have no idea what excuse me, Danny Ainge is doing behind the scenes, and him and Justin Zen. I imagine like this is catching everyone off guard in Utah. Right. But I think you also look at their future draft equity, all the picks that they got in these 2 trades. They're going to have plenty of bites at the draft apple, and being accidentally awesome, as I phrased it on Twitter. Mm-hmm. I don't really think that sets you back too much, because you're only going to have at most a 14% chance of getting Victor Wembanyama anyway. And it's just like, yes, that's better than a 0% chance, obviously. And this draft is considered very deep at the top, but I can't, like, when you're this good already, if you want to tear it down, like, it needs to be made soon, because you're 6.5 games in front of the last place team in the West. And that's right now. And we are at November 8th as we record this. That distance probably isn't going to shrink at all if you continue leaving these players out there. And as of right now, like, I'm enjoying way more than I thought. I thought I was going to have to slog through watching the Jazz this year. I thought they were going to be one of my teams that, when we had questions on them, I'd have to go back and do the most research for, where I would probably, they're the team that I'm not going to prioritize later in the year unless they have someone who's young and standing out. They are fun to watch. And I personally, like, the sentimentalist in me, like, I wouldn't take a stick of dynamite to this roster right now because the vibes are so good. But yeah, there are some indicators where it's like, is this really going to be the best offense in the league? And then you look at what they're doing on offense and it's like, well, they're hitting 38% of their threes, which seems high, but it's 10th in the league. And it's just like, yeah, they're going to take a bunch of them. That just makes a ton of sense. And they're not shooting outlier clips from really anywhere else. So, and you look at the personnel on this team when they're playing, like, why wouldn't they shoot an above average clip from 3? So I get what you're saying. I guess my thing would be, like, if you're not going to make the decision to shut guys down or to trade them, I'll give them till Thanksgiving. Then don't make that decision. And I don't think it actually hamstrings them as much moving forward because they have all those other draft picks. And I would think, and I'll point to, look what's happening in Brooklyn, where Houston decided, hey, we're going to bet against Brooklyn's future. I'm not saying Minnesota or Cleveland is nearly as dysfunctional, and their stars are not near, especially in Cleveland, aren't nearly as old. But, like, you have so many draft picks coming that one of those might end up turning into, it doesn't have to be one of your own necessarily.
Yeah, I think it is interesting that, like, I think we all came into the year thinking, like, the Jazz are going to be really bad on purpose, but they're going to have to trade some guys. And we sort of, I think, all assumed that it would be pretty easy to do that. And it's just kind of like, well, realistically,
their opening schedule made me think, like, oh, they can slow play this, because look at the teams that they've beaten.
Well, that's the thing. Like, now you've got these wins banked. Like, you can't take those off the board. So if you do decide to pivot, if and when teams come calling, or if and when, somebody wants Conley, we're going to get to that in a second. It might be too late. And it's very difficult to make a big, like, tear it down trade in friggin' early to mid-November. Like, that just doesn't really happen. So Yeah, that's why I'm panicking, is this like they're stuck on a track they did not expect and did not want. So I think, yeah, they're going to be one of the most interesting teams, unless and until they steer into it.
I'd be curious, and I know we have a lot of Jazz fans that listen to this podcast, what their actual thoughts on this are, whether they're enjoying this or there's like, you're enjoying it, but in the back of your mind, like, no, we want, because we had questions. It seemed like the fan base was concerned they actually weren't going to tank hard enough this year. And lo and behold, they are not.
They are not.
The expectation. And I get either stance. Like, it doesn't always pay to be, I think, again, I've said this twice. I should have I think it's the 2012, 2013 Nuggets, where it's the year after they trade Melo, and then they're also just really good and they win 50-plus games. And it's like that core wasn't sustainable. But it was also just like, it was fun. And so I can't, as long as this is happening, I can't bring myself to. And so, like, around Thanksgiving, I think is when you need to have, by then, though, you need to have your direction set, where it's some of these guys, that's too early to shut players down. But like, which is hard because if you don't think you're going to move, Sexton and Markkanen, and Sexton's not even trade eligible at the moment.
Right.
So it's just like, but like maybe you like to be so committed to it, like you're going to have to look, all right, well, there's Conley, there's Clarkson, there's Malik Beasley out there. And maybe you look at moving Larry Markkanen. Like, what do you get for Larry Markkanen right now? What would the Lakers do the Russ trade built around Larry Markkanen for 2 picks and a swap? Like, right. Like, give you more than the 2, and you'd have to give someone else there. They probably wouldn't, because that front office has no idea what they're doing. But so I'll give them to Thanksgiving. So I get, if you want them to tank, I think it's a panic. I'm just kind of enjoying what I'm seeing. And I still don't, it's not that I don't believe it. I don't believe that Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck won't do something about it, I guess, is where I'm at.
Agree. It's like they have to.
Our next piece or panic from No Name for God. The Nuggets should trade for a veteran point guard like Mike Conley. Outside of Jamal Murray, they have Bones Highland, Ish Smith, both of whom are nursing some minor stuff. And I feel the Nuggets would benefit hugely from an experienced court general / scorer. How would that trade look? And so I guess the first piece or panic here is, do you think the Nuggets need to trade for a veteran floor general?
That's an easy piece for me, because this is a top 5 offense with some underperformance so far. And you have Jokic, who's essentially one of the best point guards in the league, just at a different size than you're used to seeing. Murray, I think, has had a couple flashes, generally disappointing. He's going to get better. I think Highland, defensively, that's basically my macro take is like, the Nuggets are fine on offense. I'm not concerned with them having enough facilitation, with the offense running fine. Like, in the minutes that matter, Jokic is going to have the ball, and I trust that there'll be good results offensively. If Jokic gets hurt, Mike Conley's not going to save you. So I don't, and that ties into the other part of the question, is like, there really isn't a realistic way to get someone like Conley, who's making just a little under 23 million this year, non-guaranteed 24.5 next year. Because you're trading Aaron Gordon, you're trading Caldwell Pope and somebody else to make that happen. So if you want to go looking for so I'm not giving up an asset to try to get someone like Conley, who I think just wouldn't play a big enough role, or wouldn't improve you enough in the ways you need to improve, like defensively, for example, to really justify giving up what would be a significant, like a starter level asset, potentially, just for salary matching purposes. So, just looking at like the free agent point guards that are still unsigned are bad. Like, if that's the concern, like, is DJ Augustine better than Ish Smith? I mean, the fact that one's employed and the other's not suggests that's the easy answer. I mean, like Rondo, Eric Bledsoe, like I don't see. So I basically, like, this is a chill, like, piece is fine here, because the Nuggets offensively have been great without like a conventional point guard forever. Monte Morris was good in that role. I think their offense is still great and will be great, and championship caliber without him. Defense is going to just be the problem, and I don't see a point guard one you'd have to give up something big to get, like, fixing that, right?
Yeah, like, could you maybe do something for TJ McConnell, just because the salary is smaller there? I don't even think let's say the Brooklyn Nets tear it down, I don't think Patty Mills really gives them what they're looking for. It's a piece for me too, and I think also they've started to find, if you're worried about Bones Highland remaining healthy, okay, but they started to find like bench units that have Michael, when Jamal Murray and Jokic aren't playing, and you have Bones and Michael Porter Jr. on the court. The Nuggets have a 118-2 offensive rating, and they're outscoring opponents by 12.5 points per 100 possessions. If you don't think that's playoff proof, that's fine. you probably shouldn't be in a situation where you have more than one star off the court anyway in a playoff series at this point, unless that lineup is straight killing it. I'm with you that the trade is too difficult to make, and that if you were going to make a swing, it needs to be bigger scale. And I don't think that you would look at the point guard market if you're going to do that. And that we actually have a question. I don't know if it's the next one, the Piece or Panic, that gets into it. Yeah, after this one. So I wouldn't, if there's a smaller move to be made there, like, can you get TJ McConnell? Like, yeah, that just might be, you know, you use, I guess, Ish Smith. And then, like, are you willing to move Zeke Naji at this point? He's banged up, and you were touting his promise coming into training camp only to barely play him in the preseason. So I guess they could look at that, but I wouldn't view it as just like a need. I would view what we're about to discuss as like the more alarming aspect of this team.
Yeah, so let's get to that. And I'm really glad I'm throwing this to you because I have been thinking too much about Anthony Davis trades lately for work, so I don't want to deal with this until I hear you say it. This is from Nugs. The Nuggets defense remains average to crappy, and they trade MPJ for Jimmy Butler or KD. Where do you want to start with that one?
I'm almost ready to say Panic, just because it's like their ball containment on what I've watched has been really bad. They're allowing opponents to shoot above 70% at the rim outside of garbage time, which is also, lo and behold, very bad. Those two things might be related, by the way.
Let me interrupt you. I'm sorry, because that I fixated on that too, and then my knee-jerk reaction was like, God damn it, Jokic. Like, this, you can never build a championship defense around him. It's not his fault. It doesn't look like it's his fault. Like, structurally, maybe, but like, they defend the rim better when he's in the game. And it really does just seem like it's the Rudy Gobert thing, the Utah thing. The guys on the perimeter don't stay in front of anybody. And so that's where the layup parade starts. Sorry, continue.
I will also say, but I will say, I wouldn't trade for Kevin Durant because this team doesn't need Kevin Durant.
Right.
I don't want to say he's not the same player as Michael. He's better defensively than Michael Porter Jr. I want to get that clear. But like, Kevin Durant isn't fixing your perimeter defensive issues, nor is he might be, if you're looking for like a backline rim protector. Okay. Like, he can do that stuff, but Jimmy Butler would be the name you're throwing out there. I'm trying to think of just like another player. It depends on, look, all right, I'm going to phrase it this way. I'm going to say peace in this, or no, I'm going to say Panic, that if you can, I don't think the defense is going to be good. I was high on, they were my championship pick. I don't think that they're like, you know, going to be the worst defense in the league. I've even stopped checking on where they rank because it just makes me sad at how much I missed on their defense. They are 22nd. So they're actually a little bit higher than I thought right now. Everything's fine. So peace. But I Panic in the sense that I don't think this is going to be a noticeably above average defensive team, and hope maybe they'll prove me wrong just so my title pick can look good. I just don't know. This comes back to like, what trades are you supposed to make? And it has to be, if you're moving Michael Porter Jr., one, does the team want him, knowing his chronic back injuries that he has? He is one of the greatest shooters in the league right now. And I think he could do more in a larger role if you're not asking him to play make, because I just don't see it there. But like, what is the baseline return you're willing to move him for? Like, I'm just throwing this out there because I know he's not available. Like, would you move Michael Porter Jr. it would have to be a bigger trade for OG Anunoby?
That's the first name I thought of.
I'm not trying to pillage the Raptors roster. It's just like, that's the non-star type where you would give up real assets to acquire him.
Right. Like, that's the thing. I mean, so the other name, and this is so beyond implausible, never going to happen, that there's no point, but like, someone like, as if there's another, like Evan Mobley, like someone that is long, that could switch, that could cover mistakes, that like when Bones Highland gets blown by, he, you know, apparates from the 3-point arc to the rim and like snuffs it out. Like, someone like that. Anunoby is going to shut down whoever he's on the ball guarding. But like, and you know, the other thing is, it's disappointing, right? Because the theory of the team was, well, okay, so KCP, reputed as a good on-ball defender. Maybe that's a little outdated, but still solid. Bruce Brown, like, basically stayed in the league because he could defend, and then the Nets turned him into like a roll man. And then Aaron Gordon is supposed to be a good defender too. So really, like, it's Murray and Jokic that are killing your defense. And we've already said that Jokic, like, limited as he is, like, doesn't seem to be the real problem. So to me, I'm going to say peace. I think MPJ is just super valuable if he's healthy, because he's just a 5-alarm fire all the time. And he's along with Jokic, like, he's the guy that makes this offense so good that you could have the 22nd ranked defense. And like, you know, playoffs are a different story, but it's just he's so valuable. And I don't know, like Anunoby is an interesting guy. I think that's the type you're looking for.
Mhm.
I would just hope that some of your preseason expectations of the defensive additions you made, like improving the defense, will sort of come out as we go forward. Just because otherwise, we're talking a drastic move, and I don't see an easy way to do that.
No, and like they don't even have the pick equity, imminent pick equity to do
No,
it. So it's like if Dylan Brooks became available in Memphis for some reason, that's also is what is the name? Jimmy Butler has to ask her out in Miami. You mentioned Anthony Davis, I'm assuming is like a joke, but that wouldn't be like that would make a lot of sense.
yeah, but that you don't have the picks to do that. Is it Porter and picks? Like I
Well, I mean, they're both have like their Anthony Davis's chronic injury is getting injured. So
right.
like, is there like a sort of an even swap there almost? But I don't. I'm just trying to think of the name. I mean, OG Anunoby was the one that sprang to mind because he's the archetype of player that I do feel like this team still kind of needs. There's no one even. You know what would be interesting? But
Are you
like
gonna
this
say
might.
Draymond?
What?
Are you gonna say Draymond?
Oh no, that would be interesting actually. Wow, I didn't think of that. I was going to say, like, I don't know if they're there yet, and we're going to talk about them later. But like, if the Clippers were just like, right, like, we're going to trade Paul George, like, that would be someone that would. And so, like, can you use Michael Porter Jr. though? Let's say if that type of player hits the block, does Michael Porter Jr. even give you an inlet to being involved in those discussions?
I have such a hard time putting a value on Porter Jr. just because like the injury questions are so legit, and so but there's also no question that like when he's on the floor, he's the spacing he brings that he can create his own shot. Just the shooting is just it's the premium skill, right? It's the premium skill, and he's got it. So it's hard to figure out like what he's worth. I don't know. That's an interesting question, and the defense is the problem. That there's no doubt about that. Kind of looping these two Nuggets questions together.
I will say, so you went peace, I went panic. But if we were just to boil it down to the defense in general, would it both just be a panic there for Denver?
Yeah, mild for me, just because I do have some faith that the additions they made can get this up, into the say middle of the pack on defense instead of bottom 10, which is not it's not like a huge leap, right?
No. Next one comes from Herb Jones Enjoyer. Peace or panic, Grant? Zion's defense, and more specifically, how inconsistent he is while having moments of brilliance.
Um, so first of all, if you're Herb Jones enjoyer, and so obviously you appreciate great defense, and then you're gonna have to watch Zion play defense, it's like Lamborghini enjoyer saying like this Toyota Corolla sucks. Like that's just like two separate species of defensive player. I think. I mean, I don't know how to say if I'm at peace with the fact that Zion is never going to be a good defensive player. I think so. I guess, do you want to panic about that if you're the Pelicans? Like, just physically, right? He doesn't move laterally well at all. So, and his wingspan is not long. So, like, there's two major components of good defenders that he just is never going to have. I think like the inattentiveness, which I think this question really kind of focuses on. It's just, yeah, that could improve, right? Like he could be more dialed in. He could be more consistent. He could quit losing his guy on back cuts, or just totally like spacing on. He needs to make this closeout or help the helper here. Like that's all. I mean, that's been there as an issue for him from like the second he was debuted in the NBA, which makes sense. Not to make excuses for him, but like he's never had to play defense. He's always been just AAU whatever level. He's just the guy that has the ball, scores a ton, dunks on everybody, and just is the offensive engine. Probably never really been asked to play defense in any kind of serious way. So, I mean, in addition to having like physical limitations, he just isn't, he doesn't have the wiring. I don't think it hasn't been developed. So, yeah, I mean, panic because look, this Pelicans team is good. They're, I think 5-5 now, but I think we both agree that they're, still really exciting. And once they're all healthy, better than that, you're going to get into playoff series and like, guess who's getting targeted? That's going to be an issue. So if you think this Pelicans team is really going to be great, which is not unreasonable, then you probably do panic about a guy that you are going to have on the floor in major meaningful stretches against really good teams that are smart, and they're going to go at him, and he's not going to hold up very well, I don't think. So that's worth panicking if you're thinking like really big picture for what the Pelicans are trying to do.
I would say panic as well about his defense. And we've seen the moments, especially on ball, but then there's just like, he got torched at a bunch of points in that game that they played against the Jazz. And it's just, he always seems like his body's like in the wrong spot, or he's just giving everyone the room to get by him. And someone who is still, even if you think he's imperfect athletically now following his injuries, is built to not let that happen. Like it's concerning. And I do think Michael Pina wrote about this for The Ringer, that the fact that Zion at the 5 is luxury more than necessity now helps you a little bit moving forward. But you just mentioned it, going into a playoff series where if you're going to be targeted, like they have a guy in Zion that they can go after. I am willing to give him the benefit of the doubt to an extent where it's like, okay, he's coming back from a serious foot injury. Now he's dealt with some hip stuff, when that could, I would imagine, like having a hip injury can affect turning your body properly when you're trying to defend on the ball. So I want to say peace, mostly because we rushed to coronate the Pelicans. I don't want to be, I want to be as right about the Pelicans as I was about the Cavs, but I think it's fair to just like, no, that's just something that you're going to have to plan around at this point. Like the athletic tools on offense aren't always going to translate to the defensive end for him. But like, and there'll be moments where he can do it, which is fine. Maybe you fast forward a few years and like it's better, but it probably won't be because he's in his athletic prime now. And I think people are kind of in general, like the prevailing consensus is that his prime is going to be, I don't want to say shorter, but it's going to come earlier just based off what makes him so good. If you're worried about like some of the shot selection this year on offense, I would just give it peace. Like he's traded in a lot of looks at the rim for like more of those short mid-rangers, which he's just not making. And I think if he changes just his decision-making there specifically, and then some of the lineups he's been playing in have not been ideal for that. So I'd be peace there. But for the defense, I think it's, if you think he needs to be let's say a serviceable defender, for this team to reach its peak, then yeah, I would probably argue it's time to panic. And that's a weird thing to say with Trey Murphy and Herb Jones and Dyson Daniels there.
Right.
And even like having Jose Alvarado there as well. But like, and then Brandon Ingram has been, but he's even like, we talk about this with the Warriors where the guys feel like they overreact because they have to cover up for James Wiseman. There's a little bit of that when you look behind Zion on some plays when he's pulled out. There are guys overreacting behind him, and that's difficult to overcome. I don't know where I stand on what that does to the Pelicans ceiling, because I do think he is so unbelievably transcendent and dominant on the offensive end. It ultimately is worth it to just still like, no, we're building this team around Zion. Of course, that's what we're doing. But I think the defense in general, we're probably at the point where we shouldn't be waiting on him to become this, I don't even want to say exceptional, but like good or reliable defender.
Yeah, passable, like playable.
He's very passable at the moment.
Yeah, it's very easy to get past him. I think one point of that's slightly encouraging is like he did drop weight and he did get into better shape. So like he can do that, and maybe that's something else he's never really been asked to do, like play defense. And I think it's encouraging that he has looked better just from a body composition standpoint this year. So maybe like as he gets a little further removed from the foot, as he maybe continues to lean out a little more, he can at least be a little more mobile, flexible. I think of someone like, not to keep bringing it back to the Warriors, but like Kevon Looney had 2 hip surgeries, right? And just like moved like he was 50 initially, and then like got into yoga and just, he came up as a guard, so he had like perimeter defensive skills. But like guys can get more mobile and flexible and get down in a stance better. It just takes like a ton of work. So, it's not impossible, but Zion, just because of his frame, has like a lot of really like difficult, like, obstacles, I'd say to like, improve substantially. Let's talk about someone with a very different frame. This is from Jokic Joestar. Mo Bamba's window to become an NBA player is closing, with Bol Bol showing out.
I guess that'd be panic, because first of all, I know he got his like quote unquote money, but it never made sense to bring him back, even though he proved last year like, oh, there is the element of the floor spacing rim protector from him. But like you had Paolo Banchero, you thought you were going to have Jonathan Isaac, who said the other day, like, he's closer than ever to returning. I was like, what does that even fucking mean? Like, you picked up a basketball today? Is that what that means? You put down the typewriter for your latest non-bestseller and was able to pick up a basketball?
Your latest anti-vax campaign?
Right. So it's a panic, because like, I don't see what the pathway is to minutes for him. He did, because I watched Magic Houston. Like he was kind of this defensive jolt against Şengün at points.
He had a good game last night.
So maybe that, but it's like, what is the pathway long term for him? Maybe panic saying he can't be an NBA player is a little strong because we haven't seen him outside Orlando's ecosystem, which has always been just clogged on the front line, doesn't provide enough spacing to begin with. So yeah, I would like to see him elsewhere. But because Bol, who is just more dynamic on offense, when you look at what he can do with the ball in his hands and like those finishes he's able to make turning corners, there's no argument to find Bamba consistent playing time. And oh, hey, that's going to get harder if Jonathan Isaac ever does transition from author to basketball player again. So it's just like, I feel like I don't want to blame it on the Magic. And Bamba's dealt with a lot of injuries. He dealt with conditioning issues as well. I believe he was also hit hard when he got sick or had COVID. I'm not sure if it was last year or the year before. So like there have been obstacles. But yeah, the window's closing. Like we're on this dude's second contract. He's coming off a standout year and can't find minutes on a team that's like they're fun to watch. And like they've put up a lot of fight, but like they're not invested in the immediate as much as some of these other teams. So I will say panic. I just don't know like who is emotionally invested in the outcome of Mo Bamba's career that they're actually panicking. I'm not dismissing. I want to see him elsewhere. I just don't know, if you're holding him to being a top 7, top 5 draft prospect, yeah, it's definitely time to panic about that.
Yeah, 100% there. I'm gonna like really zero in on the actual verbiage of the question. Is window to become an NBA player is closing. Like one, he's already an NBA player. He's got a second contract. So I'm not sure that window is shut. What I think the intention of the question is like, is he ever going to get out in front of Bol now in the rotation? And that's like, that might be a little panicky. Let's see Bol like sustain this though, right? Like
and
the
hold
guy
up for an entire season too, because he's dealt with his own injury issues,
right? And had like some character and maturity concerns like coming out of the draft. That's why he's like, let's see, right? Plus, like such an unusual player, right? He's just like he has on-ball skills. The shot blocking, like he's already like Bamba does not have the edge there. But like, look, Bamba last year 15 and 11 with 2 blocks per 36 minutes. You're never going to play him 36 minutes, but he did start 69 games. So like for a bad team, sure. But like he's an NBA player. And the idea of like, if he's your third big, that's a luxury. A guy that can stretch the floor and block shots. Like that's better than a lot of third bigs are going to do for you. So he's going to be around. I think it's just like, with the Magic, probably not, unless Bol just, we look back on this in like January and say, hey, remember that incredible early stretch when Bol, who's in the G League now, looked like he was an NBA starter? Like that's not off the table yet. I'm just going to put that out there.
This all ends with Mo Bamba eventually running point for the Raptors at some
It's the only way.
Next up, this one comes from Usher. Is CP3 just having a slow start, or is he officially now the best passing bricklayer in the league?
I'm going to say peace. I mean, even though he did leave last night's game with like I think it was a heel soreness or heel contusion or something.
Messaging, we haven't heard anything additionally on that, but the messaging coming out of that was if he could play, he would have, but he couldn't, is what he said. But he's also not concerned about it. So yeah, it's like, I get it, people.
The number, look, like the trend line is going down, right? Like he was in the low 30s from 3 last year. He's at 27% going into last night. This year, 36% from the field. I mean, combined with being 37 years old, like eventually something's going to go. You're not going to,
never getting that old. I've already decided.
I'm already that old. Be great forever. I can tell you from experience, you're never going to be your best forever. I do think it's positive that he's taking more threes as a percentage of his field goal attempts than he has in any year of his career outside of the Houston years, where they just punish you for not shooting a bunch of threes in that era. So, I mean, if you're going to try to make up some of the drop you're getting in effective field goal percentage, shooting a lot of threes is a decent way to do it. He's never been a high volume guy. I think you can tilt the math a little bit in your favor. That doesn't change the fact that like he is just worse as a shooter this year, and it's a continuation of a trend. I'm just not ready to panic yet. He's still averaging 10 assists a game. He still is one of the smartest players in the league. All that stuff is great. I guess I just trust him to make shots from the elbow in playoff series, which is like really all you need him to do from a scoring perspective.
He's shooting 50% on his pull-up twos now, so that has come up.
That's fine.
However, he is shooting 22.2% on his pull-up threes, and that's like been his shot, even when he wasn't considered this three-point shooter. What I will say, and I do wonder if there's an element of transitory wrinkles here, he's taking a lot more of his shots in catch and shoot situations. Catch and shoot threes have accounted for about 20% of his attempts this year. That number was at 7.1% last year. So the fact that he's shooting 33.3% on catch and shoot threes, that's actually higher than you might expect at this point, which is where we're at. You could see that number coming up because it's come up, but it's a volume thing. You're also just looking at his, looks in general, where it does feel like he can be more stationary on offense at points, or at least be without the ball. 39.3% of his shots have come off assists this year. That is down from 15 or up from 15.2% last year. There's a drastically different role being played for him on offense. And so I'm very much at peace until, like, if this sustains through the All-Star break, the shooting, then it's a concern, because in theory, his offensive responsibility, I don't want to say it's gotten easier, but for stretches, it is more streamlined than it was because Devin Booker exists, which is a luxury. If you're worried about the larger picture where it's okay, well, what does he look like on defense come playoff time and his health? Yeah, like maybe it's time to panic a little bit, where it's like, okay, the Suns have navigated no Jay Crowder. Now Cam Johnson is out for a couple months. The bench has been better than we'd expect. Are we throwing one too many, like, oh fucks into the equation here? Now CP3 is injured and not shooting well. I'm going to go with peace because I do think his offensive usage, despite the assists, has been, I don't want to go as far as say dramatically different, but it's materially different than it has been in years past.
I think, wouldn't you say though that the Suns won 64 games last year, and Chris Paul played pretty much his typical role, not prime Chris Paul, but like you said, right? He was doing a lot more self-creation, a lot less catch and shoot, and like everybody else, but he wore down. And wouldn't this role change be exactly the approach you'd want to take, so that he's doing his lift isn't as heavy, and you have the luxury of Devin Booker being great and being able to do on-ball stuff. You're trying to preserve him. Maybe that's the charitable take, is like, this is intentional and it's a weird role change and he's not used to it, combined with a little bit of aging, and that's why like the numbers are what they are and they're not encouraging. I think there's a real great chance that like the Suns got left with nothing after 64 wins last year. So it's kind of like, well, what really matters? Let's make sure we're in one piece and in decent shape, especially Chris Paul, for the games that actually count, that we care about, that we need to win, in May and even June, best case scenario. I think there's an element of that. I think that this could just be intentional and he's not used to it. And that's a factor too.
And that's also what could make it so disarming, is because that's so counterintuitive to what we've known about CP3. And also, look, they're playing him 30 minutes per game as opposed to 33. So that's already pulled back. You're looking at his time of possession last year is compared to this year is actually, it's lower, which is not surprising there. And it's lower relative to, like, you wouldn't expect just that drop off from the minutes that he is not playing. I think his front court touches were about the same. Yeah, they're higher this year than they were last year, but just like his role has changed. And the fact that it's the shooting that is like the biggest, maybe it's the health you're worried about or how he can look in certain defensive situations, but the fact that it's the shooting and we still sort of see him manipulate like switches off the dribble. He's not cooking guys like he used to do to Rudy Gobert, but that he's still so comfortable getting to his spots. That makes me even more confident that it's like these numbers will normalize.
Yeah. The trick with this is like, what it looks like right now is, so we're preserving Chris Paul versus Chris Paul is starting to be pretty washed, is like indistinguishable. And you're just not going to know until the playoffs, where either he keeps doing this or they kind of revert back to, oh, he's still kind of that guy. They'll be, so we're not going to know, I don't think, for a while.
Can I throw my own curveball here?
Please.
Peace or panic, the Suns need to trade for someone who will be in their closing lineup or is their sixth best player at worst.
I mean,
yeah, the one is just peace, because it's like, unless you think Cam Johnson's going to be out the rest of the year, there's Cam, there's Ayton, there's Bridges, there's Paul, and there's Devin Booker. And so to say that they need to trade for someone in the closing lineup would be, are you saying CP3 is cooked, or that you don't believe in Cam? Or maybe look, you could just say Jock Landale's there. Like, why do you need DeAndre Ayton? Should we revisit this Kevin Durant stuff?
I mean, the Ayton trade is the one that, like, if you're gonna do something, I think that's who you look at. But you can't do anything with him for what, at least another month.
January, yeah.
I think 2 months. The Johnson, it was today that it was a meniscus trim instead of a repair, so that's the shorter return timeline. It's like a 1 to 2 month thing. So theoretically, he'll be okay. But yeah, no, they do feel like guys short, don't you think? Like, like
Almost like
now,
you might be sitting at home tweeting.
yeah, like a certain like combo forward that maybe like would be in a huge role right now if he had just hung out for a little bit. Yeah, maybe that they're a specific guy short, I guess it feels like.
He's probably not even the guy that they actually need when you look at this. But
it would help though. I mean, it sure helps. Otherwise, we play Dario Saric at the 4 now. Is that what
saying? The difference between like, oh, Damian Lee and Torrey Craig and Josh Okogie are super important, and oh, we have Jay Crowder. Like, there's a big dip there.
Well, boy, we close that out with a lot of panic. Let's go. We don't need to panic about just another phenomenal pod because we did it, Dan. We delivered.
5 stars from me.
5 stars. 5 stars to you. 5 stars to everybody. That's going to do it for us. Thanks for listening, everybody. Please remember, like Dan said at the top, download, comment, like, rate, review, subscribe, smash all the buttons. Check us out on our socials. Engage with us. Get on the Discord. You can find all the information on that stuff in the YouTube and podcast description. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Help us just keep building this because we like doing it and we like interacting with you guys. So in closing, I would again just like to apologize to the one and only Jared Allen.
And you forgot to shout out Frank Ntilikina.
I'm gonna let you shout out Frank Ntilikina. That's your thing.
Who is healthy and available to play as we record this. So the Mavericks are going to win the 2023 NBA title.